And far be it for me to whine about media bias, okay? I mean, I've been in it. It's the only job I've ever had. It's certainly the only job I've ever been qualified to have. My parents were in it. My great-grandfather was in it. I come from a media family. I'm not, I've always been the one right-wing guy in the room who would kind of defend the New York Times and defend ABC News where my dad worked and sort of defend the whole enterprise. But I can say with total sincerity, after a lifetime of living around this and an adult lifetime of doing it personally, that it's beyond defensible at this point. And that we have reached a stage where, for a bunch of complicated reasons, some having to do with personal belief, everyone in the press is liberal, obviously, and partly having to do with economics, the collapse of the news business as a business, the press isn't really pretending anymore. And let me just say why I think this is important. First, I think it's important for the press to pretend to be objective. Now, this is like one of these freshman year dorm debates. Do you know what I mean? About phoniness, because people under 30 are very, very caught up in the horrifying nature of phoniness and hypocrisy. My kids are very upset about phoniness. I embrace it. And I'll tell you why. I do. No, I mean that with all sincerity. And as I try to explain to my children, and they always look kind of horrified when I say this, because they're all like little Holden Caulfields, all kids are. Do you know what I mean? They're mad at the phonies of the world. And I always say to them, well, guess what else is phony? Manners. Good morning, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? We're both hungover, but we don't admit it. You know what I mean? We pretend that everything is fine, just fine. Why? So we don't wind up killing each other. That's the lubricant that allows the gears of machinery to turn without overheating and melting. That's just true. Some poses, mom and dad were not living together. That's why we have separate phone numbers. Why do we have the same address? Well, it's an apartment building. Or whatever. You keep up the pose. Because there is an important, not in all poses, but in certain poses. Because they reflect your values, or at least the values that you ascribe to and work toward. Maybe not the values that you're actually achieving, but they're a description of your goals. Which is another way of saying, the press has never been objective, but for many years they pretended they were, which got them a little closer to being so, if you see what I'm saying. The moment at which the press decided, you know what, I give up. We're not even pretending anymore. We're just going to basically sign up with the campaign. That moment, and I know my fellow conservatives have been mad about this for many, many decades, and Dan Rather's a liberal. You think? But at least Dan Rather would be like, that ain't true, faster than a fox in a forest fire. I'm not going to, I'm not liberal. We always knew he was, but he never admitted it. In the 2008 election, the press, and I worked at a major network at the time, just, as I said, just kind of gave up. I mean, some members of the press, including one of my favorite producers, just said, you know what, I'm just going to go all the way and join the Obama campaign, which she did. More than a dozen other mainstream, big-time reporters, 3 of them good friends of mine, just are now working in the administration. The press admitted its love affair, allowed itself to fall in love with Barack Obama to an extent that I don't think anybody even imagined possible. Even people who like Barack Obama were appalled by it. And in fact, love isn't even love. The press didn't love Barack Obama. Love is what you feel for the Redskins. That's a kind of, no, seriously, that's a kind of platonic love, or should be. The love that the press felt for Obama was something more than that. It was just a red in the face, effervescent, moist palm. The kind of love you really have to be a 14-year-old boy to understand. You know what I mean? A sort of florid love, right? I go to bed thinking about you, I wake up just en fuego, okay? How else can I put this? And if you live in Washington, if you live in the District of Columbia, as I do, you experience during that time this sort of weird, I don't know what the word for it would be, Stockholm Syndrome. There's a very kind of claustrophobic feeling where everybody felt the way. If you really think about it, Barack Obama's core constituencies from day one have been African-American voters, young voters, and rich white liberals. And that describes every single person in the District of Columbia except me. So you could wake up in the morning, go about your business during the day, go to bed at night, and never cast eyes upon a single person who didn't share your florid love for Barack Obama. It had a distorting effect that you wouldn't experience if you lived in, say, Plano, okay? And anyone from Plano? I love your tackle boxes. Let me just say that. I'm serious. The Plano Plastic Company makes the best tackle boxes, and you can use it for tackle or tools, whatever. I've got about 100 of them. But I bet you didn't experience that. We did here, and it matters because this is the center of all political coverage. And so the coverage of Obama was wildly, wildly distorted. Not necessarily his fault. I don't think, I mean, all candidates would love to get treated like God. Relatively few are, but I mean, it's not, I don't think it's the president's fault that he would want that. But he got it, in contrast to any other politician at the national level in my lifetime. This was deeply distressing to those, I won't even bore you with this, but it's very distressing to those of us in the news business. And to a lot, even liberals in the news business didn't like it. And some of us decided, you know what, it's time to stop whining and to sort of do something about it. I personally pushed the ejection button, got out, and started my own news organization, which is launching next month. Because my feeling was one of the reasons I'm not a liberal in the first place. Well, I don't know. No, but I mean, not to be mean, but after spending 20 years of hearing friends of mine who are conservatives say, the mainstream media is terrible, it's like, wait, I thought the whole point of being conservatives was you're not a whiner. You know, let's just, if you don't like it, do it. So I hope it works. But you will see more and more people doing that. And that's one of the effects of this radical change in the press. I just want to say very quickly what I think the other effect is, and that's on the president himself. And we're still trying to get a handle on who Barack Obama is in Washington. Some things about him are very obvious. He's incredibly talented as a communicator, incredibly talented. Many of you I know have met him, and you know that he's as charming as he seems. I think he is. In my dealings with him, he has always been, and I don't agree with him at all. I'd eat broken glass before I voted for him, but I'm very impressed by him as a man. You can't not be if you're with him. And that's, I think, pretty obvious when you watch him. Maybe a little less than it has been, but you know, he got elected partly because he's a powerful presence. He's smart, that's obvious too. He's got some capable campaign people around him.